It's Tuesday, September 23rd, 2008, and that means you've got less than 24 days to register for NORMLCon 2008. It's NORML's 37th Annual National Conference, Friday, October 17th through Sunday, October 19th, at the DoubleTree Hotel and Executive Meeting Center, Berkeley Marina, in Berkeley, California. Register now for the conference. Early registrations get special discount pricing. Don't delay. We have negotiated a special rate for rooms that are sure to sell out fast. The theme of the convention is, It's Not Your Parents' Prohibition. Over the first 2 days, you'll learn more than you thought you could know about marijuana law reform in our plenary and breakout sessions, which include how the media lie about cannabis, growing up and raising children in the age of legal medical pot, politics 2008, pot culture, the politics of marijuana and health. War on pot is a war on young people. What if we arrested 20 million Americans and nobody noticed? Featuring the top experts in marijuana law reform from NORML and other cannabis-centered organizations. On Sunday, Amsterdam University presents a look at California's medical marijuana dispensary businesses. But it's not all work and no play. NORMLCon 2008 also presents social gatherings and entertainment in the evenings so activists and attendees can network. It's 3 days of the best marijuana conference in the world with the largest, most popular marijuana organization in the world. Join us October 17th through 19th for the NORML National Conference in Berkeley, California. Sign up online today at NORML.org. It's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Welcome, dear Stashers, to the Daily Audio Stash. Glad to have you here, and thanks for downloading the podcast. Want to remind you once again, the NORML conference is coming up on October 17th, and specifically, October 1st is the last day to be able to register at the hotel for the special discounted room rate at the DoubleTree Marina. So you'll definitely want to get yourself registered before October 1st so you can get the low price on the hotel rooms. Now, speaking of the NORML conference, NORML's executive director, Alan St. Pierre, joins us today on the Stash for a special monologue that is part of his presentation that he'll be giving at the NORML conference, so enjoy that. Also, an intrepid reporter named Doug has sent in an MP3 of his report chronicling the recent studies that have shown marijuana compounds to be effective antibacterials in the fight against the deadly superbug MRSA. So I want to encourage everyone listening out there, if you have something you want to contribute to the Stash, zip it up in an MP3 and send it my way. I'll be glad to put it onto the program. Also joining us in the podcast today is Paul Serini from MarijuanaRadio.com, another one of the fine marijuana podcasts out there. His podcast is actually live on the air at MarijuanaRadio.com. You should check it out sometime for some fun and some great information for the cannabis community out there. All right, everybody, it's going to be another great daily audio stash. And, well, let's see. Why don't we grab an apple and a Bic pen and a little bit of tinfoil and enjoy your NORML daily audio stash. Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML daily audio stash, Hemp Headlines. 1 in 5 American high schools drug test students. From Strategies for Success, Issue 3, Volume 1. Just how many schools test students for drug use? Federal estimates ranged from 500 to 2,000 and were based on the number of schools receiving U.S. Department of Education grants, results from surveys, and media reports. Then, in October 2007, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released the results of a national survey which indicate that the number of schools conducting random testing may be closer to 4,000, more than double the highest estimates cited previously. Out of an estimated 59,364 middle and high schools in the country, weighted survey results from the individual schools included in the survey suggest that 11.4% of middle schools and 19.5% of high schools include some type of drug testing as part of their drug prevention programs. Approximately 7% of the public and private middle schools and high schools in the nation, or 4,200, conduct random student drug testing. The study also shows that public and private schools test for similar drugs. Among the public and private middle and high schools that conduct drug testing, 86% reported testing for marijuana, 78% tested for opiates such as heroin or morphine, 77% tested for amphetamines such as meth or ecstasy, 75% tested for cocaine, 71% tested for PCP, 50% tested for alcohol, 27% tested for steroids, and 16% tested for nicotine. As for methods of testing, the survey determined that urine tests were the most popular and were used by 84% of schools that tested. 40% of the schools reported using breathalyzer tests, 15% reported using hair tests, 8% reported using saliva tests, and 3% reported using sweat tests. Tobacco is an illegal drug for minors. 12.4% of all minor teenagers used tobacco products in the past month. Tobacco use kills 438,000 people annually, with 38,000 of those from secondhand smoke. Tobacco use, especially when initiated before age 18, is incredibly addictive. Therefore, only 16% of the drug testing schools drug test for cigarettes. Alcohol is an illegal drug for minors. 29% of all 16 to 17-year-olds drank alcohol in the past month, with 19.4% reporting binge drinking activity. Alcohol use killed 34,562 people in 2005, not including drunk driving accidents, not murders, just drinking to death. Alcohol use, especially in binge drinking, can lead to overdose death and drunk driving deaths. Therefore, only 50% of the drug testing schools drug test for booze. Cannabis is an illegal drug for minors. Only 6.7% of minor teenagers used cannabis in the past month. Cannabis use killed 0 people in the past 5,000 years of recorded human history. Cannabis use peaks at age 18 to 20, and half those users quit voluntarily by age 30, and the addictive properties of cannabis are rated at about those of caffeine. Therefore, a whopping 86% of the drug testing schools drug test for weed. I'm not in favor of any sort of student drug testing. These tests are only allowed by the Supreme Court for those students seeking to join competitive extracurricular activities. Studies show kids involved in extracurriculars stay away from drugs. So the idea here is to test the good kids who don't have drug problems and provide a barrier to extracurriculars for the bad kids with drug problems, which are the very sorts of activities that would help the bad kids avoid drugs? Don't let them tell you these drug tests are for student safety. Far more kids are harmed by alcohol and tobacco use, but the schools don't test for them as much as marijuana. Could that be because someday those teenagers are going to grow up to become legal customers for booze and smokes? I'm sure Anheuser-Busch and Philip Morris wouldn't be fond of our schools using drug testing to intimidate their future clients during their formative addiction and brand loyalty years. Los Angeles medical marijuana user sues police for $1 million. From the Los Angeles Times. A medical marijuana user has filed a $1 million lawsuit against Seal Beach police for taking up to 50 of his pot plants and allegedly forcing him to become an informant. The Orange County Superior Court lawsuit filed last month by Bruce Benedict, age 43, of Seal Beach, said he is a marijuana patient and caregiver who is allowed by California law to grow and distribute marijuana. Benedict alleged he called police because of illegal construction in his apartment building and officers smelled marijuana. County prosecutors refused to file charges, so officers returned to Benedict's apartment later with Federal Drug Enforcement Administration agents in tow, according to the suit. The pot was confiscated and Benedict was arrested. California law allows medical marijuana, but federal law prohibits it. Benedict's suit said police officers asked him to move out of the city and become an informant in various drug matters. Benedict complied, alleging police told him he would face federal charges if he didn't work for them. The city has declined comment. Do these local police have no sense? You have medical marijuana patients who are obeying the law, living in a state that overwhelmingly supports medical marijuana. So your response to his complaint about illegal construction is, you sick the feds on him? Great. Now you've terrorized thousands of other law-abiding medical marijuana patients who won't be so quick to call local law enforcement when they witness a crime or dangerous situation in progress. That's the way to build safe neighborhoods. Encourage the neighbors to hide away in their apartments and not call police when their neighbors could be in danger. The erosion of citizens' respect for the law and law enforcement is one of the rarely mentioned harms of the war on marijuana. The most recent national survey on drug use and health says that there are over 100 million Americans, or about 40.6% of the population, who have tried marijuana at least once in their life. 14.4 million Americans, about 5.8% of the population, have used marijuana in the past month. And a 2004 survey estimated 3.1 million Americans smoke marijuana almost daily, defined as more than 300 days per year. How much safer would our neighborhoods be if between 3 to 14 million Americans weren't intimidated to call police for fear of revealing their marijuana stash or personal garden? Not to mention how much safer those neighborhoods would be without the robberies and violence that prohibition creates. Recently, I heard 5 gunshots go off 3 houses down the block at midnight. I called 911 immediately because as a registered Oregon caregiver, my few ounces of stash are well below the pound-and-a-half limit. If I was still living in Idaho, I might think twice about calling and hope someone else is calling. Think of all that police money, time, and effort that goes into arresting 872,000 marijuana smokers each year. At least $7.7 billion is spent at the federal and state level enforcing marijuana prohibition. A cop once told me a marijuana arrest takes an hour of his time, so that's about equivalent to having 436 federal and state officers doing nothing but making marijuana busts every hour, every day for a year. Or think of it as one full-time, nothing but marijuana arrest cop for every congressional district. That doesn't factor in manpower and helicopter time to rip up every marijuana plant they find, which is 90% unsmokable feral ditchweed, nor does it take into account courts, clerks, and paperwork time. Tennessee officer fired after choking marijuana suspect on video. This is a follow-up to a story we brought you in July. Mount Juliet, Tennessee. A Tennessee police officer has pleaded not guilty to aggravated assault charges after he was caught on video using a chokehold on a man suspected of hiding marijuana in his mouth. An attorney for Corporal William Cosby says he pleaded not guilty on Thursday. A lawyer for the city of Mount Juliet, about 20 miles east of Nashville, says Cosby has been fired. Cosby's attorney, Chuck Ward, says the decision to fire Cosby shows the city believes him to be, quote, guilty until proven innocent, end quote. Video from a city police car shows Cosby using a chokehold on 26-year-old James Lawrence Anders Jr. during an April traffic stop. The video then shows Anders passing out. Charges including marijuana possession were later dropped. Anders is suing over the incident. One small measure of justice in this insane war on marijuana. Officer Cosby believed that Anders was trying to swallow marijuana, so he was choking Anders, saying, quote, it's for your own good to prevent you from having an overdose, end quote. Is police training so poor that they don't tell young officers that you can't overdose on marijuana? Yeah, I guess so, since they continue to arrest us for our own good.
Stupid Stoner Stories.
As a public service, NORML reminds you that smoking marijuana will not make one stupid. However, some stupid people do smoke marijuana. Don't be one of those stoners that make the rest of us look bad. Learn your lesson from today's
Stupid Stoner Story.
Police make a big marijuana bust and detained a suspected drug smuggler. Chief Quinero Munoz says the suspect was using a tractor-trailer called a belly dumper to haul the drugs when he was spotted at the Flying J truck stop on North US 281. Those 18-wheelers, he said, are normally used to haul caliche or gravel and have doors that open underneath, said Munoz. Quote, for some unknown reason, the bottom doors came open and apparently the bundles of marijuana fell out, and that's how we got the call, end quote. Police arrested the truck driver after they chased after him for a short while. They seized 150 bundles weighing about 2,000 pounds.
All right. Let's see. Batteries, some aspirin, a Sharpie. Yeah, got it. Got my soda. Did I leave my credit card at the desk? No, got it. The gas cap on? Yeah. Dang, I just know I'm forgetting something. Well, I know I locked the doors on the belly dumper, so that ain't it. Dang, I just got this feeling. Now it's time to play Pass the Stash, where you can win cool prizes from NORML. U.S. drug czar John Walters doesn't believe anybody is in jail for marijuana possession.
The fact is today, people don't go to jail for possession of marijuana. Finding somebody in jail or prison for a first-time nonviolent offender for possession of marijuana is like finding a unicorn.
But the loveliest of them all was the unicorn. It was green.
Are you one of the drug czar's unicorns? Did you serve time for a first-time nonviolent marijuana possession charge? Tell us your story and you could win big.
The loveliest of all was the unicorn.
You can remain anonymous, and if we use your story on the podcast, you'll win a copy of the DVD Totally Baked, autographed by AC/DC's lead singer Brian Johnson, as well as excellent NORML swag like stickers and posters, and a steak dinner from drug czar John Walters. Steak dinner depends on whether the drug czar keeps his word, which isn't very likely.
We didn't arrest 800,000 marijuana users. That's the same lie I just talked to your colleague back there about.
Send us your email, I am a marijuana unicorn, to stash@norml.org today. Contest ends Friday, October 10th, 2008.
Don't you forget my unicorn.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 12 states today, and THCF has medical clinics in 6 of those states. Our physicians help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help them obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, Nevada, Hawaii, and California. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at www.hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Tuesday is our look at your government at work here at the Audio Stash. While the inevitable re-legalization of cannabis hemp will have to happen at the federal level, the steps leading to that destination take place at the state and municipal levels. We focus in on the initiatives, bills, and amendments regarding cannabis across all 50 states, and what activists like you are doing to enact a positive reform to our cruel and outdated marijuana laws.
Body dies, the eagle flies, the birds they sing, the creatures learn. It's an honest day's work. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's an honest day's work.
If you're working hard to make an impact in your city and state, please email us at stash@normal.org and let's share your local efforts with the worldwide cannabis community. Together, we can affect our government at work.
Afternoon pollution rises high into the sky. How can we still deny the truth?
The following is a monologue from NORML Executive Director Alan St. Pierre, examining the phenomenon of what he calls drug war turncoats.
According to Buddha, the lie tastes sweet in the beginning, but bitter in the end. The truth tastes bitter at the beginning and sweet in the end. Recent media reports regarding turncoat anti-drug warriors and hires at pro-reform organizations may possibly signify changes in public attitudes in favor of cannabis law reform. Take the case of United Kingdom's former director of Anti-Drug Coordination Unit, Julian Critchley. In a recent BBC World Service interview, Critchley insists, quote, "I'm not saying drugs should be decriminalized because it would be fun if we could all get stoned with impunity. I'm saying that we've tried minimizing harm through a draconian legal policy. It is now clear that enforcement and supply-side interventions are largely pointless. They haven't worked," unquote. Maybe more revealing from the UK's former drug czar? Quote, "I think what was truly depressing about my time in the civil service was that the professionals I met from every sector held the same view. The illegality of drugs causes far more problems for society and the individual than it solves. Yet, publicly, all those people were forced to repeat the mantra that the government would be tough on drugs, even though they all knew that the policy was causing harm," unquote. Here in the United States, according to the newspaper The Hill, former deputy director of the anti-cannabis drug group Drug Free America Foundation, David Krall, found himself this summer supporting, not opposing, a spending amendment in Congress regarding federal medical marijuana enforcement. Quote, "Being away from DFAF allowed me an opportunity to take a fresh look at the issue. I don't have skin in the game anymore. In our nation today, we need less interference by the federal government on an issue such as this," unquote. Well, amen. Welcome to the team, Brother Krall. Also, the hires of recent Libertarian Party presidential candidate Bob Barr and former ONDCP senior staff member Barbara Roberts at law reform groups as pro-cannabis law reform lobbyists would have been unheard of 10 to 20 years ago. Thankfully, these days, organizations now exist such as Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, LEAP, L-E-A-P, an amalgam of repentant, often former and retired law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and prison officials who seek to radically reform the very institutions that provided them with lifelong employment and/or retirement benefits. LEAP is a free organization to join and is one of the fastest growing and most important drug policy reform groups working in the trenches today. Anti-cannabis spokesman for DFAF, John Pastovic, reacting to Krall's change of heart, quote, "I don't believe one person changing their position gives any credibility to the other side on this," unquote. Now, after years of abject failure, I think prohibitionists like Pastovic will need to confront the reality that the government's misguided war on cannabis consumers is attracting more, not less, detractors every day, notably former employees in government and nonprofit organizations who have thankfully come to realize, not a moment too late, that it is not possible for citizens in free market-oriented democracies to be supposedly drug-free while still possessing cognitive liberty and personal autonomy. This is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C.
What it do, y'all? This is Send Dog. I'm chilling on NORML Audio Stash all day long. Here we go.
Normal Daily Audio Stash listener Doug sent in this MP3 with his review of the news reports suggesting that marijuana compounds might be an effective antibiotic against superbugs like MRSA.
Hey, Radical Russ, this is Doug. I love your show. Keep up the good work. You put a lot of effort into it, and I appreciate it. A few weeks ago, a report came out in the New York Times about a study that was done in Europe that showed cannabis has promise as an antibacterial agent that could fight MRSA and other superbugs. You did an interview with Dr. Mitch Earlywine and talked about the implications of the study. You mentioned that good news about marijuana is rarely publicized, yet bad news seems to always make headlines. I've noticed that myself. I was surprised when Dr. Donald Tashkin's in-depth study of long-term users came out saying that even people who were heavy smokers for decades did not show an increase in lung cancer. In fact, Tashkin said there even seemed to be a preventative effect. Wow, I thought the news media would be all over that, yet the only place I heard about it was on the Internet. And so it's been with a number of good news reports that have been released in the past few years. It was coincidental that shortly after the Times report, the director of the South Bend Airport was in the news with a MRSA infection. The director, who's well known in the community and often seen in the news, had a real scare with the infection. A local television news program covered the story, and many people commented about it on their website at WNDU.com. I thought it would be a good place to let people know about the Times article, so I submitted a comment saying that there is news about an antibacterial compound that could be effective against MRSA, and I attached the link to the New York Times article. I did not mention marijuana in the posting. The comments do not automatically go online. They have to be approved by someone at the station. Well, no surprise, my comment was never published. I sent an email to the reporter who covered the story and mentioned that I thought this article would make a good follow-up to the MRSA story. In addition, I sent the same email to another news anchor at the station who does a continuing series on new medical developments. To make it easier for them to follow up, I mentioned that Dr. Earlywine has been recently discussing the topic on a podcast and that he would be a likely person to interview for more information. And I provided Dr. Earlywine's contact information at State University of New York at Albany, making it easy for them to contact him. Well, I've never seen a follow-up story, never received a return email, and undoubtedly they have not contacted Dr. Earlywine. This little experiment proved one thing to me. It's not that the news media does not know about the good news reports. It's that they don't want to publish them. And that's a shame. Russ, keep on educating listeners one person at a time. Eventually, you may be able to educate someone in the mainstream media. They need it.
I'm Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML. Have you heard about the new super pot that's supposedly 20 times more potent than your father's Woodstock weed? Don't believe the hype. Marijuana's THC potency has always varied, even in the 60s and 70s. And the drug czar's numbers are full of, well, exaggerations. While no intoxicant is harmless, cannabis is non-toxic and far safer than alcohol. No matter how much you smoke, of whatever potency, you cannot die of a marijuana overdose. Potency is irrelevant anyway. More potent pot just means you smoke less of it, meaning less harmful smoke in your lungs. This is a prime example of harm reduction in action. Besides, the government already allows the prescription of THC pills. Its commercial brand name is Marinol, and it's 100% potent. Meanwhile, the federal government won't allow dying people to use natural marijuana, no matter what the potency? Does this make sense to you? Learn the facts about pot. Visit NORML.org today.
Here at the Normal Daily Audio Stash, we work hard to change our nation's marijuana laws through education and discussion. But we also take time to relax and unwind with an eclectic mix of pod-safe music from many independent artists. We look for music that speaks to the growing truth about cannabis, or music that speaks to broader themes of freedom, liberty, social justice, equality, and protest. To find out more about the artists and download the music you hear on this podcast, just log on to stash.normal.org. And if you'd like to get your music heard by the online cannabis community, just send us an email at stash@normal.org. Hey everybody, you know I love to get folky. Today on our musical stash break, we hear from a do-it-yourself house musician who goes by the moniker Howitzer. A video game junkie from Kentucky who writes and records his own music at home, Howitzer brings us the lovely track Stoned, an easily digestible acoustic track. Howitzer is one of the emerging technology-driven musicians who upload their music on the web and invite other house musicians to download, mix up, add to, and spit out an ever-evolving sound. If you would like your hand at remixing any of Howitzer's music, he invites you to do so on his MySpace page. We've got a link to it at our blog at stash.normal.org. His music runs the spectrum of acoustic to electronica. Any other house musicians out there? Feel free to send us your toker-friendly tunes at stash@normal.org. We would love to hear you on the Daily Audio Stash. For more information, again, check out our blog at stash.normal.org, where we've got more information about the artist and an MP3 download of this song. It's Howitzer with Stoned.
Drifting away is the only thing I know. I see you grow in so many different ways. I try to leave, but I can't help but stay. You make me feel stoned. I couldn't live my life that way. My head gets clearer every day. Stone, I'm drifting away. I kiss your lips and I get high, and I need to check my head, and I can't take back all the things I said. When you're gone, I want you back. You're all I need to keep my mind on track. I look around all over town, you're nowhere to be found. I don't know why I get so stoned. I couldn't live my life that way. Stoned. My head gets clearer every day. What more can I say?
Hey, how's it going? My name's Will. I don't work at a used record store. I don't own an iguana, although I'm sure they make great pets. I don't have dreadlocks or play the acoustic guitar. I can remember quite well, thank you, and no, I don't constantly have the munchies. When 420 comes around, I've still got 40 minutes of work left. I've never hit a girl on a bike with my car or shot my friend with a shotgun. I've never had to apologize for letting a girl I was watching drown in a pool while I was getting high because, duh, I wouldn't be getting high if I was around children. I'm a regular guy who works regular jobs, just like the majority of all Americans who use marijuana occasionally and responsibly. My name is Will, and I'm normal.
Over here at the Normal Daily Audio Stash, we love to promote all the activists out there that are working so hard to bring an end to adult marijuana prohibition, and the internet is a great place to find people, especially those that are putting together podcasts and videocasts, and we're joined by one of those such people here at the Daily Audio Stash, Paul Serini, who joins us from marijuanaradio.com. And Paul, welcome to the Stash.
Hi, thank you very much.
Well, tell our listeners a little bit about what they can find at marijuanaradio.com.
Well, basically, we make entertainment that's broadly based around the topic of marijuana, and it's a blend of comedy and silliness, and sometimes we take up the more serious position of talking politics on the issue and whatnot.
Great source of entertainment and information. And about how often can people pick up a new episode of MarijuanaRadio.com?
We broadcast a live episode on the internet once every week at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and we have a pretty good live following, which is fun. We usually get many dozens of people on the internet there with us discussing the show and whatnot.
Excellent. MarijuanaRadio.com live broadcasting, and about once a week. What day of the week?
Tuesday evening.
Tuesday evening. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Tuesday, 6 p.m. On the Pacific Coast, 9 p.m. on the East Coast. Where are you guys broadcasting from in the Mountain Time Zone?
We broadcast out of Denver, actually. In my studio, we're in a little quaint part of town that's an art district. I built a studio there to make internet radio, believe it or not.
Oh, wow, that's great. And so we got once a week live on MarijuanaRadio.com. You also have a video feed people can get in touch with?
Actually, now our website includes both our TV content and our radio content. So if you go to MarijuanaRadio.com, there's a column right in the middle that you'll see a live video feed. If we're live doing our show, you'll actually see us there visually. And we also have archived a bunch of other videos we've done. We go all kinds of places like HempFest, and we've gone out on excursions to learn how to glass blow, and we've even gone up and filmed short movie type things in the mountains and frozen our butts off. And so we're trying to just, like I said, entertain with all of these things and stuff and get the word out there. My whole idea is to mainstream the culture as much as possible, make it so that it's just a normal thing that's not stigmatized.
Yeah, we're all behind that. Now, I assume this is more than just you that are working on it. Who are some of the people that are working there at MarijuanaRadio.com?
Oh, yes, indeed. In fact, my wife is the only other person working full-time with me right now. She's kind of the general manager of the station. She's a liaison between the business and a lot of sponsors that we have as well, like McKenna, who's the host of the show, is also Miss High Times August. She works quite a lot with it. Even though she doesn't work full-time, it seems like she works full-time, and she cares about it a lot. And we have a crew of regulars, Dan Kay, who's a comedian here in Denver, and an intern named Roger, the intern, who's they're all very well connected to the local comedy scene, so we get a great repertoire of guests because of these guys and what they do professionally outside of the show.
Oh, that's excellent. Now, how long is the show? About an hour, or?
We go about an hour and a half every week, give or take 10 minutes. We feel really lucky to have a loose format that way.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, are you also accepting, you said it was all about the entertainment and such, do you accept submissions from your listeners or from your viewers for, I don't know, commercials or songs or artwork or anything like that?
The truth is, we have lots of contests where we try and get the listeners to be creative in one way or another, whether it's create a piece of media, make a short video, giving us a hello or something. The more creative, the better. So we're always trying to get people to create stuff like that. Creatively, I love to tap into the audience. If they're motivated to do something because they like us, it really stimulates me and motivates me to make the show better, to make it more exciting for them.
Okay. You know, I hear a lot of times, you know, when I go to these hemp fests and when I'm producing the podcast here for NORML, one of the criticisms that I'll hear from people sometimes is, well, it's a whole lot of preaching to the choir. You know, everybody that's listening is already, you know, pretty much agrees that marijuana should be regulated. So what do you have to say to the people who would say, you know, MarijuanaRadio.com, that's just preaching to the choir?
Well, there might be some people who are on the fence about it, but I still really believe that the more the culture is proliferated and the more it's in people's faces, the more normal it's going to seem.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
No, that's great.
It's just, you know, some people, we are preaching to the choir, but we also preach to our choir, do something about it.
There you go.
Write your congressman, get respectfully in the face of these public figures and make them talk about it. I know I do. Like, I'm trying to get up close into the face of governors to say, well, will you talk about this issue? Because it's irresponsible not to talk about this issue. Like, through entertainment, I think that's how we're activists. We put our lifestyle out there. It's a very honest lifestyle, and there's some risk-taking involved because, you know, we put ourselves out there smoking. Some people, I mean, the host of the show, her father has concerns that it might screw up her career in the future and stuff. So it's not something that behind the scenes we take very lightly.
Yeah. You know, I was in Denver just recently for the Democratic National Convention, and I'm glad you mentioned, you know, getting the public officials to talk about it, you know, because the issue was not even brought up at the Democratic Convention, which, you know, shocked and surprised me considering that the Democratic nominee had a history with marijuana and cocaine use in his past. You'd think he'd at least be sympathetic to the idea of how this is, you know, tearing down the inner cities and it's causing so much, you know, disenfranchisement of African Americans. I was shocked by that.
Well, especially those large masses of people who are in jail suffering because of this. They're the ones who have voices that are totally not heard, the ones I do this for. I've reserved myself to the fact that because of the way we smoke and put our faces out there, I might go to jail eventually. I'm terrified of that, but my voice, I believe, is for that person in jail. That's the person I care the most about, and the money that the government spends to incarcerate people is preposterous. I call it institutionalized madness. And, you know, on one hand, you have a guy like Joe Biden who supports abortion rights. He's like for women having the right to choose. And on the other hand, he's the guy who helped draft the law that put Tommy Chong in jail.
Yeah.
He can't see past it that we shouldn't go to jail for pot use or growing pot, or especially in Tommy Chong's case, not even dealing with pot. He just sold a bong and wound up in jail.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I always, and I think you've got a good point about bringing the culture out and normalizing the culture of it, because I really believe that it's not marijuana, the mildly psychotropic weed that people are so afraid of. It's the people who smoke it. They're afraid of the culture. They're afraid of, you know, it's that old 60s culture war that's still being fought 40 years later.
Some of the nicest people I've ever met are pot smokers. Some of my best friends in my whole life, that's one of the things we share together is we smoke together. We're smokers. And not all my friends are. Not all my family members who I care about dearly are smokers. My own wife, who's the general manager of my station, does not smoke. And it's okay to be friends with people who are and aren't. It's really a matter of the constitution of the person individually, whether you got to judge that person or not on the basis of whether they smoke weed or not. Weed is not a determining factor whether someone's responsible or not.
Exactly. One final thing here for us to wrap up.
Sure.
Again, we're speaking with Paul Sereni of marijuanaradio.com. Any charges? Does anyone have to subscribe to anything to go to marijuanaradio.com?
No, not at all. The show's entirely free, and so are the videos. We have a VIP section that people get access to when they donate to the show, which helps us survive and stuff. That's like paid content. We do an after show where we're off the leash and crazy, but otherwise the regular show itself is totally free to listeners, and it's in iTunes. It's really easy to get on your iPod.
Excellent. Well, Paul, thank you so much for putting together marijuanaradio.com, yet another way for those of us in the cannabis community to band together and to show the world that we are, you know, responsible, law-abiding citizens.
Thank you very much. I always enjoy stuff like this.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. leave you today with another one of our cannabis quotes. This one comes from Peter Lilly, a former cabinet minister in the UK, who said, quote, "The marijuana as gateway drug theory is the reverse of the truth. In fact, it is making the supply and possession of cannabis criminal that drives people through the gates of the law and into the illegal world, where they can and must acquire their supplies from people who also push heroin and cocaine and other hard drugs." End quote. Exactly right, Minister Lilly. Like I always say, nobody ever says Bacardi 151 is a gateway drug, because you have to buy it in the liquor store where they won't sell you cocaine. It's really simple. Tax and regulate marijuana similar to liquor. If we can regulate Bacardi 151, we can regulate a joint for adults. I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and interviews you can use for the cannabis community. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.